Okay, well, welcome. I am Fran Dyke, President of the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that works to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. Membership information is available on our website or at the table at the back of the room. We thank the Multnomah Bar Foundation and the Sarah Fruing Fund for their generous support of this program. Tonight's event is being recorded by Metro East Community Media. The event will be available for on-demand viewing from a link on our website, lwvpdx.org, and from the website of Metro East Community Media, metroeast.org. To view the event on local access cable TV, see the playback schedule posted on our website and in your program. Our moderator tonight is Barbara Dudley, Senior Fellow at the Center for Public Service at Portland State University and a member of the League of Women Voters of Portland. In addition to a distinguished career in executive and legal positions with organizations such as the California Agricultural Labor Relations Board, the National Lawyers Guild, Greenpeace USA, and the National AFL-CIO, Barbara is a founding member and senior policy advisor of the Working Families Party of Oregon and was active in their successful effort to bring fusion voting to Oregon. I will now turn the program over to Barbara.
Thank you, Fran. And welcome all of you to this discussion of election methods and systems of representation. These are issues which have become increasingly prominent nationally and here in Oregon. Today's discussion is one of the events that will help inform the position that the League of Women Voters of Oregon will take on these issues. The League's positions guide the advocacy of the League and are adopted by consensus after they do a formal study. In the first part of the program, we will learn about the recent study of election methods conducted by the League of Women Voters of Oregon. That study is available online at the website of the Portland League, which is lwvpdx.org. And first I'll introduce Kristen Everhart, who is a member of the League and of the committee that recently completed this in-depth update of the Oregon League's study of election methods. She's a senior researcher at Sightline Institute, where her topics for research, writing, and speaking are climate change policy and democracy reform. Ms. Everhart has worked for the Natural Resources Defense Council and has taught courses on climate change and energy law at Stanford Law School and UCLA School of Law. She is going to present the findings of the Committee on Election Methods. Kristen.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you all for being here tonight to talk about a timely topic. So, as Barbara said, this is an update to the 2009 League study, Elections Methods Study, and the idea of doing this, the idea for this update was to make it more actionable so that the League could take positions, either supporting or opposing democracy reforms when they came up, like fusion voting or top two primaries, or what was just on the ballot in November, Benton County's ranked choice voting. So the scope of the study was to look at methods that have been used elsewhere to see if there's anything that we can learn here in Oregon to make our voting system more representative of the people. So the overview, I'm going to talk about the four main sections of the report, and if you read the report, you'll see it's more in depth than this presentation will be. But I'm going to talk about single winner elections and multi-winner elections, and then briefly touch on parties and administration. So we have you'll see this little hierarchy. We have the general elections, and then the two subcategories, main subcategories I'll be talking about are single winner and multi-winner. So single winner, there we go. Aha. So single winner elections can be where it's really inherently single winner, like there's only one person who would ever serve in that office, such as governor, mayor, attorney general, secretary of state. But you can also have single winner elections for legislatures where there are actually multiple people in that body, but we might elect them one at a time. So governor, there's only ever going to be one governor. It's always going to be a single winner election. But legislature, there's actually many legislators, and so they can be elected in multi-winner elections or in single winner. So we'll talk more about the multi-winner, but it's important to note that distinction. Okay, so there's different ways of electing. If you're going to have a single winner, you can do it via plurality voting, where the person with the most votes wins. You can do it via range or score voting, approval voting, and ranked choice voting. So I'm going to go through each of those so you know what the ballot looks like, what they are. So here's our little diagram. So we're in single winner. Those are all winner take all because only one person ever wins for a single election. And then there's these three categories: plurality, approval or rank, range, or approval, and then ranked choice. So plurality, one winner. The person with the most votes wins, and it's not always a majority of votes, for example. So, yeah. Maybe, can I just tell you when I need to advance? Okay, so can we go back? Is this, yeah. So this is, everybody knows what a plurality ballot looks like. It's what pretty much all of your ballots probably have looked like for most of your life. It's choose one, you see all the candidates, and you get to fill in one bubble. And that's the extent of the expression of your preference, this person. So the advantages of plurality voting are that it's familiar. We've all done it. It's very simple. It's very easy to understand. Fill in one bubble. And we already have the existing voting machines that can count these plurality votes. But it does have some major downsides. So it doesn't require a majority winner. So just the person with the most votes wins, which means sometimes that more than half of the people voting did not want that person to win, which can mean that more than half of the people end up feeling very unrepresented in a plurality system. There's a lot of wasted votes. So if you are in the minority in a plurality district, it really doesn't matter who you vote for because the person who's in the majority is going to win. And even if you're voting for the person in the majority, if they get a landslide vote, all those votes past the plurality don't help them win anymore. Once they get to that plurality, they don't really need to get any more votes. And of course, there's the potential for spoilers, which we all know from 2000 that when you have three people in the race and you have plurality winner, the less popular person can sometimes throw the election to the second most popular person. And then another interesting downside is negative campaigns. So because the person winning just needs to get more votes than the other person, they don't actually need to win majority support for themselves. Negative campaigning is a very effective strategy in plurality voting because as long as you can get enough people who are just turned off by the whole thing and don't turn out to vote, then you can still win just by getting more of your base turned out than the other person got. Whereas in a majority system, you would need to actually attract a majority of the votes. Okay, so range or score voting. So this is not used in any governmental election, so I didn't have an example of it, but you all are familiar with it probably from Amazon.com or Hot or Not. So this is where you can give a bigger expression of your preference. So you can, for each candidate, say, do you like them a lot, a little, not much, not at all? So for every candidate, you get to sort of express how you feel about them. So this is the ballot, a possible ballot. You get to say, is this person unacceptable, acceptable, okay, I love them, I think they're great. For each and every candidate. So the benefits of this are it's much more expressive. It lets you say much more about what you think in this election. It is familiar to voters, even though it's not used in any governmental elections. This idea is used a lot in Amazon in ratings. Downsides are it's not used, it isn't proven in government situation. It's very susceptible to strategic voting. So if you kind of know which way the election's going, you can dishonestly rank somebody higher than you thought or lower than you really think in order to get the outcome that you want. And it also, it doesn't require majority support, and there's some situations where you get unintended consequences where you, by ranking somebody or like by rating them higher, you actually make it less likely that they will win in certain mathematical anomalies. Okay, so now approval voting is where you get to say for each, it's a subcategory of rating voting because you're basically giving everybody a 0 or a 1. So instead of giving a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will have a 0 or a 1 for each person. So you get to say, do you like this person or do you not? Completely hypothetical example. So this is a hypothetical ballot. If you would get to say, how many of these people would you be okay with if they won? And often it's more than one. So this is more expressive than just choose one. You get to express yourself more. And it's still pretty simple. So one of the advantages of it is it's still pretty familiar. Our existing machinery can count this type of voting. A problem is it also, like the more extended rating voting, is susceptible to strategic voting. So in the places, this isn't used in, it's used in some student bodies, and what they have discovered is that most people end up just marking one anyway, because that's the strategic way to make sure that your person wins. If you vote for more than one, you can actually end up making it less likely that your favorite person will win. So if everybody votes honestly and truly approves all the people they approve of, this gets you very representative results. But in reality, people often end up using it just like plurality voting, and so it ends up functioning like plurality voting. Okay, so now ranked choice. So in this one, you get to rank your candidates in order of preference, hypothetically. So this is a sample ballot. For each one, you get to say your first, second, third, fourth choice, and then the way that these get counted is the candidate with the least votes gets eliminated, and their votes get their second choice votes gets redistributed until there's a majority winner. So this requires a majority winner in the last round. It's this way of counting a ranked choice ballot is called instant runoff voting, because it's as if you had a runoff instead of having like a top two primary where you're making sure that there's two in that round. You get to rank all of them at one time in one round and then eliminate until you get a majority winner. So the benefits of this way of voting are a majority winner. It's much more expressive. Oh, sorry, and it's also, this is used in cities around the country. And now it will be used in Benton County, Oregon, and the state of Maine just approved this for their state representatives and as well as for their congressional representatives in the federal government. So starting next year, we will have more evidence of what this looks like at a statewide level. So the advantages are no spoilers, because you keep going through rounds until you get to majority. It requires a majority. It's very resistant to strategic voting, and it's well established. It's being used in cities around the country already. The disadvantages are there will be costs to implement it. Not all vote counting machines in Oregon can count this type of ballot. Once you have those machines, you still need to educate voters about how to use it. It's a little bit more complicated, so voters have to understand how the ranking works. And there are some mathematical anomalies where in certain situations, by ranking somebody higher, you could result in them being less likely to win. Okay, so the the sort of overall, there's many criteria by which to evaluate voting systems that experts have looked at, and we looked through them all. We put them in an appendix, but this is sort of the top level. Plurality voting does the worst across the board on the many criteria that experts use. Range, approval, and ranked choice voting overall score this, about the same, but they have different strengths and weaknesses. So as mentioned, if everybody votes honestly, they all do pretty well on representativeness, but the range and approval voting are unfortunately somewhat susceptible to people not voting honestly. Okay, so multi-winner systems. So remember, this is legislative bodies where there's more than one. Yeah. So there's a couple different categories of ways that you can vote in a multi-winner system. So you can use proportional voting, and then there's like several different categories of proportional. Non-proportional voting, which ends up acting basically just like a single winner plurality vote. And there's a couple of semi-proportional options. So what do I mean by proportional voting? So proportional, so this is where we are. So we're on multiple winner. There's sort of three categories of multiple winner options: proportional, semi-proportional, and non-proportional, also called block. So proportional voting means that groups of like-minded people can elect legislators in the same numbers as they exist in the population. So if 20% of people are Green Party members, you can get 20% of the seats in the legislature. If 30% of people are Democrats, you get 30% of seats in the legislature. So, that's where we are. So this is some of our founding fathers thought that this was how government should work, that the government should be in miniature a replication of the people, that we were, too many of us to get into a room, so we were electing people who could sort of represent our interests for them to get into a room and work things out. And so they should sort of look like the rest of us look. Next slide. So that is not working in the United States, because we do not use a proportional system, we use a non-proportional system, and the results are pretty dramatic. So you can look at demographics, where white men are 31% of the population in the United States, and yet they hold 65% of public offices. Women of color are 19% of the population, but hold only 4% of offices. You can also look at it by, next slide, by party affiliation. So the biggest and fastest growing group of party identification in the United States is none of the above. No, I don't like either of those parties. And yet, of course, everyone elected to public office is either a Democrat or a Republican, with a few very minor exceptions, even though about 40% of Americans say that they are neither of those things. Or you can look at it by ideology, where people identify as either strong liberal, moderate conservative, strong conservative, and then classify what our US Congress looks like, and it does not look the same as the people. And this is a direct result of the way we vote. So this is the idea of proportional representation, that if the voters look like this, that their elected representatives should look like that too. Okay, so I'm going to give sort of the overview of all the forms of proportional representation, what they have in common, and then I'll go into each of the various options. So in general, more voters are represented, so people feel better. It reduces the impact of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering gets most of its power from single winner elections. Without single winner elections, gerrymandering is much less effective, and it provides more voice for third parties. So disadvantages are it's unfamiliar to Americans. We only do proportional representation in one city in the United States, and so it's more difficult to understand and to explain. Okay, so the three types of proportional representation, the three ways that you can get that sort of your government pretty much looks like the people are list voting, multi-member proportional voting, and ranked choice voting. So this is where, remember I said you have to the single winner versus multi-winner. There's a ranked choice voting for single winner elections, and then there's ranked choice voting for multi-winner. The ballot looks the same, but the counting is different. So in one, you're electing one person, and then in this, what I'm talking about, you're going to be electing more than one person. Okay, so this is a ballot for open list, right? Yeah, open list. So each party lists candidates that affiliate with that party. And as a voter, you get to pick the individual that you like. And that vote counts for both that individual candidate as well as for the party. So parties will win seats according to how many votes there were for the party. And then they will assign those seats based on how many votes the individual candidates got. So the benefits are, it's proportional. It gives more expression to the voter. You get to vote for an individual as well as for a party. And this is the most common form of voting used in developed countries around the world. The disadvantage for the US is it depends on strong political parties, and we only really have 2, so it would require a transition. Okay, next. So closed list is kind of the same, except instead of picking your individual, you only get to pick your party. And then the party assigns the seats based on the order that they listed them in the ballot. So less expression for the individual voter and more power to the party. So this is, next slide. Also well established around the world, it's less common than the open list voting because obviously voters prefer to have a little bit more voice. Okay, next. So mixed member proportional, this is the ballot. You get 2 votes. So you get one for your local representative who is elected just like we elect our Congress people. They're in your local district, and the voting is plurality voting for them. But then you also get this vote for your favorite party. So you can distinguish if you have an individual like a local rep who is a Green Party member and you just really like them, but you're generally a Democrat, you can say, I'm a Democrat, but I just like this guy. So that candidate will get elected, but the party will get seats in the Congress proportional to how many votes they get. So you'll still see a proportional Congress, but you'll also get your favorite local representative. So this is, so New Zealand used to do single winner voting the way that we do because they are a former British colony. We're the only people in the world who still do it this way. But they switched. So they're kind of an interesting case study for us because they voted the way that we do, and then they decided to vote differently. And the system that they moved to was this mixed member proportional because it keeps that local district representative, which was familiar to them, but then also gives a voice to the party. And so they previously, just like us, had 2 parties that completely dominated the Congress. And then after adopting multi-member proportional, you can see they got some extra parties who got some seats, including, in particular, next slide, the Maoris, who are the native people of New Zealand, who had previously been completely excluded from the federal government. They now are able to win seats in proportion to their numbers in the population. Okay, so this is just like a hypothetical of how multi-member proportional could work in Oregon, where you can see our existing districts with sort of the existing mix of Democrats and Republicans, and then your other vote for the parties would fill in the rest to make sure that they get proportional representation. And then you see this is a hypothetical result where you would get some independents and some working party members into the legislature. Okay, so it's proportional. It allows for you to still keep your local representative, which Americans are used to, and so that would be an advantage, while still also giving some voice to the party. And it would be administratable with our existing equipment. We wouldn't have to change anything. So one possible disadvantage, you just have to make sure that you set the thresholds right to make sure that you're not having tiny parties, each getting 1 seat and getting power in the legislature. Oh, okay. Next slide. Okay, so ranked choice voting in a multi-member situation, so the ballot looks just the same as it did in the single winner. But what you have is you have bigger districts where you're electing multiple legislators at the same time. So districts ideally should be about 5 representatives per district, but they could be 3 or they could be 7. So this is an example. Imagine the Senate. If we split the state into 5 districts, each district would get to elect 5 senators for a Senate of 25. So each of those districts right now, like the rural areas get pretty much all red, and the urban areas get pretty much all Democrats. But what would happen is all of those Republicans who live in Portland would suddenly be able to elect somebody, and the Democrats who live in rural areas would suddenly be able to elect somebody, at least 1 out of the 5. Next slide. Or we could use our existing districts and elect 3 per district. So advantages is proportional. Disadvantages, again, the ranked choice ballot, our equipment not across the state can't necessarily use it. And this is Cambridge, Massachusetts elects their school board and their city council via this method. And you can see how diverse their school board is by using that method. This is Portland city council races, which the majority of people end up getting 100% of the representation. And this is the Portland City Council, which you will notice looks a little bit different than the Cambridge School District.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry, I have more, but I'm out of time.
It's quite all right. It's a lot of information. I want to remind everybody that you can access the full study by going to the League's website. So don't think you have to understand it all now. And we will be hearing other views as we get into the other segments of tonight's presentation. But thank you, Kristen, for quite an impressive rundown of the variations. This concludes part 1 of our election methods discussion. Is there a better way to vote was the title. And we will proceed to the other segments after a brief pause.